You're listening to Ernestly Speaking, the only weekly podcast that covers friends, foes, and anything that goes. And now, for your badass host, Ernest Owens. And we're back for a special edition episode of Ernestly Speaking with your host, Ernest Owens, myself. Well, as Trump faces indictment, there has been so many other things happening in the world. I haven't done that many special editions this season because, it's been so much going on left and right. But this particular situation, I felt like it was something that I should just do a solo episode on and also just, talk about it all in totality. Because normally when these type of moments happen, there's a lot of people that are saying one thing and, there's whispers and gossip. I get it all. So I just said, okay, let me just put this in my own words. And, I think the power of podcasting compared to sometimes writing op-eds or blogs or whatnot is that you can just converse, and you can just express your thoughts and say them and, say things in ways that you may not be able to want to say in a written word. And this was something that I felt like I needed to converse and open up about and speak about. And that's why I'm here. So earlier this week, I had announced that I was no longer a member of NABJ, and that decision wasn't solely mine, but that of the NABJ Board of Directors. A lot of you all, of course, online has been, showing lots of love and asking questions about what happened. And a little bit of me initially was like, I don't necessarily want to discuss all of it because it's ugly. It's embarrassing for the National Association of Black Journalists as an institution. It's just not a good look for them. The situation is just downright embarrassing. And initially I was like, I don't really want to air the dirty laundry because you think to yourself, well, doing that, does that hurt more than help? But I think the way that this went down is setting a bad precedent that is concerning to me. And I think speaking up about this publicly and letting people know what happened, I think can inform those who are still a part of the organization to consider the current culture. I'm very concerned about the future of the National Association of Black Journalists. I'm concerned about the leadership, how the leadership is engaging, how they're creating policies, how they're implementing policies, how they're choosing to enforce these policies, and the nastiness of the politics that's been happening for several years. Anyone who's been a member of NABJ know that I have been, in many ways, the advocate, the activist voice, the voice of dissent, the pot stirrer, the rabble rouser, any title you can give me. But truth be told, I've just been a young Black journalist that was curious, was interested, and invested in seeing Black journalism institutions thrive. And as someone who has a background in nonprofit leadership and has served on countless boards over my, years, when you see certain things, you have questions. And, what I feel like in this organization is that asking questions, speaking truth to power is looked at and viewed as a threat. That is my opinion, and I'm entitled to have that opinion. And I think the issue is that having opinions and being critical has been weaponized and goaded as, oh, you're disparaging. You're speaking disparaging about the organization. What will the sponsors think? Ooh, and it's been a lot of this weaponization of fear tactics, in my opinion, that has, clamped down on free speech in ways that should not be with the Fourth Estate. But there are some people who think otherwise. So I want to just frame this to say that my intention of this podcast, in my own words, is to raise concern, to raise consciousness, and hopefully empower and inform the NABJ membership and those who support this organization to challenge some of the concerning behavior of the board, of the leadership in place, and get some answers and demand some real change. So here's what happened. And I'm just going to be very frank and very clear. A couple of months after NABJ and the Philadelphia Association of Black Journalists, which I'm currently the president of, was no longer affiliated, was not working together, and the organization was not in affiliation, which was in late December. Early March, I want to say March 3rd, around early March, I received a mailed document to my house, my actual personal address. It was like a Courier Express mail from United States Postal Service. I opened the package, and it was a big, like manila file folder. Like it looked like it was a top secret. They even kind of said confidential, and the only person that can open this is the recipient. It looked very suspicious. But it came from NABJ, and it looked very suspicious, and it gave me concerns, and it looked very odd to me when I saw this packaging. I was like, what is this? This is something that is in this manila folder, and I'm really concerned about the way that is being presented to me. Well, I had received an email around that same time, and it came from the NABJ. It came from the executive director, Drew Berry, but he sent it to me coming from an ad hoc committee. And so there was an NABJ ad hoc ethics committee, and they sent me this letter that was overnight courier or overnight carrier. There was regarding alleged violations of the NABJ Code of Conduct and Anti-Harassment Policy. And they said to me, "Dear Mr. Owens, you're receiving this letter to inform you that the National Association of Black Journalists Ad Hoc Ethics Committee is investigating what appears to be a long pattern of violations by you of the NABJ Code of Conduct and Anti-Harassment Policy, quote, the NABJ Code of Conduct. A link to that policy is provided below at the NABJonline.org for your ease of reference. Specifically, your apparent violations appear to be regarding paragraphs 2 and 5 of the NABJ Code of Conduct, which those paragraphs I'll read to you. Paragraph number 2, NABJ Code of Conduct. We expect anyone attending our events or participating in any form of NABJ communications or business to interact with one another in a way that does not degrade or denigrate others. This includes members, staff, the board, attendees, volunteers, sponsors, partners, and other guests. All attendees are to remain professional with others and refrain from engaging in behavior and actions that constitute harassment, which includes but is not limited to sexual comments, uninvited touching, and sexual advances, hostile or physical intimidation, sexist, misogynistic, homophobic, transphobic, and racist language, and or dissemination of disinformation and misinformation. Paragraph 5, NABJ Code of Conduct. NABJ members, staff, partners, board, volunteers, sponsors, and other guests also must refrain from disseminating false or misleading information in person, virtually, and or on all social media platforms that could potentially harm the NABJ brand and or negatively impact future engagements with NABJ, including funding opportunities. So they basically started off by pointing that they found that in paragraph 2 of the Code of Conduct that I disseminated disinformation and misinformation. And then in the 5th paragraph, they had said that I disseminated false and misleading information that could potentially harm the NABJ brand and or negatively impact future engagements in NABJ, including funding opportunities. And attached is a list of apparent violations under review. They said the committee is formally providing you the opportunity to respond. They said I have 5 days from delivery of the letter to respond to allegations set forth herein. So I was told that I had by 5 p.m. on March 9th, 2023 to respond to this, this letter. So here are the things that they said that I did that violated the ad hoc committee's violations. So I'm going to read them. Brace yourself on the ridiculousness of them, quite frankly, but here you go. One of them was that the first one was they said that at the NABJ business meeting in Vegas in 2022, I had stated that NABJ had not filed its 2019-2020 federal taxes. And this is when we was at the business meeting where it was open to the general membership, where anybody can, point views. They said I was in violation of disseminating disinformation and misinformation. The second thing was that in the tweet that I said back in July 8th of 2020, it was a tweet from July 8th, 2020. Yes, nearly 3 years ago. They said that I spread misinformation online about NABJ's virtual convention. They quoted something in my tweet where in the tweet said, membership shouldn't have been misled financially. They said that was just spreading disinformation. Yes. At this point, you're recognizing how crazy it gets, but I'm going to go further. The third point they said was that in another tweet which it wasn't even a tweet, it was a Facebook post, but I guess they don't know what social media looks like. So they said in a tweet, even though it was a Facebook post, but since we're on the topic of misinformation, they said, you accuse NABJ of not wanting a, quote, openly gay person on the board, freelancers, Philadelphia, and Region 1 representation, or an opinionated millennial on the board. They said that was in violation of disseminating disinformation. I was speaking on my personal experience. It was my personal opinion based on my experience at the organization, but they treated my personal opinion as me spreading misinformation and disinformation, even though that was my experience. The fourth point, they said, you accuse NABJ of becoming a price gouging enterprise. And they were saying that, that this was untrue allegation. They said there was no credible evidence to support this claim. As the list of sponsors along the membership grow as evidence of value, it is a hit on their reputation and it's false. Well, I did think that it was a price gouging enterprise because of just the way that members are being charged for the membership and also that. But again, this is my opinion. This is my free speech. But again, they, just went there. That was also a tweet that was done in 2020. These are all things that were done in 2020 at this point. So then at number 5, they said in 2022, during a virtual call with chapter members, you said that NABJ wants PABJ information about sponsors and membership so that it can poach those sponsors. Well, for starters, they said in their documentation as evidence that they had heard this from a source that did not want to provide and speak on the record because they did not want to speak because they didn't want to face retaliation. Well, first of all, that's a lie. I did not say that during a virtual call. But they just simply treated that as information that they could use. And I said, that's not what I said. It's just not true. But, that's my opinion. But I didn't say it in a virtual call with chapter members and sponsors and partners. That's a lie. I never did that. And the person who said it, they said it was an unnamed source. So you're just taking, who's the person? Okay. It's given, McCarthyism, y'all. So then the 6th, they said there was a tweet where I accused the NABJ Elections Committee of cheating. And this was in 2020 when I was running against Walter Smith Randolph, who is currently on the NABJ board of directors, who was one of the people that voted. I don't know if he voted, however he voted, but he's on the board where he was given the opportunity to vote against me, but we'll see. I don't know if he did or not. Let me just clarify, but he's on the board and he was able to make a vote. So they said that I accused the NABJ Elections Committee of cheating. This was in 2020. Again, this is literally 3 years ago. I came to that conclusion by saying cheating because they allowed Walter Smith Randolph, a candidate who was also a part of the NABJ convention in 22 as a program chair. While he was working the convention, he was also a candidate at the same time. And I thought that was a conflict of interest. How can you be, basically on staff and be on the team, as a committee chair involved as a convention chair, programming chair of the convention to which you're a candidate of? I thought that was an unfair advantage, and I had appealed it and challenged it. And I felt like by them having him be a part of it in that way, that was a form of cheating. So that was my rationale. But again, they considered that to be disseminating false information. So then, number 7, in the 2020 NABJ Treasurer's race, look how petty they are. They're still bothered about this race. You called your opponent, which was at the time Walter Smith Randolph, as a Manchurian candidate and a coward on Twitter. And they said dictionary.com definition, a Manchurian candidate commonly used to indicate disloyalty or corruption, whether intentional or unintentional, and includes the allegation that a person is being used as a puppet by some other person or power. Yeah, I believe that. I believe that Walter Smith Randolph, in some cases, was used as a puppet whether intentional or unintentional, by the NABJ board and Dorothy Tucker, the NABJ president. The reason why I say this is because on record, one of my board members on record told me, and this person will not deny it, that she called them in March and basically said that she was running Walter against me and she wanted us to, she was like, don't tell Ernest, because she wanted to see how it would play out, because I was not supposed to know Walter had decided to run for treasurer. Now, let me just be clear about this fact. Walter and I were friends. Until all this happened, I thought we were in a better place because we did meet up at the convention in Vegas in 2022. We did have a conversation. Y'all saw the selfie. Like, I thought we were in a better place. And it was obviously that there were people from his camp that was trying to fuel this tension and this beef. And I told him that. I said that, listen, it looked like the way this was set up, that she was purposely pinning you to run against me, because Dorothy Tucker has issues with me and I have concerns with some of her leadership decisions. So there's been no secret about that. But the way the race was going, I remember, and I'm going to just be straight 100, before we even ran, we had a conversation. And I said to him, like, look, I'm running for treasurer, I thought you was going to run for parliamentarian. I thought you was considering another position. Like, I didn't know you was going to do this all of a sudden. And he gave me the impression that, I said, why won't you run for a region? I think region 3 or no, not region 3. Was it region 3 or region 2? I think it was region 2. But I was like, there was another region he could run for. And I think it was region 3. I said, why won't you do that? And he said to me, well, I have to go to Dorothy. Why do you have to ask Dorothy what position? And so he did go to Dorothy and talk to Dorothy. And he said Dorothy told him that there was no other position, because pretty much she had, I don't want to say stacked the board, but she had people that she wanted for certain seats and positions. And I remember that there were certain people that got in certain slots that were not. Like, I remember vividly that Amir from CNN in Atlanta was going to go for a regional seat. And then all of a sudden he's VP of digital because there's someone else they put for region 3. And then it was obvious that he wasn't going to go. Like, it was just interesting how these seats were moving. And it just was very obvious at that time, with everything that was going on, that there was just certain seats. People were moving seats around for positions. And I think that's, I don't want to get into the nitty gritty, but I just remember different timelines. There were different seats that people were supposed to go for. And initially, Walter did not jumping for treasurer. He was considering potentially parliamentarian, but then that didn't happen. And as far as me and him go in our communication, it was pretty much, he went to Dorothy to talk to Dorothy to figure out if there was something else. He felt like he had to go back to her. And I remember him telling me he had the conversation with her and then it didn't go through. So then he decided to run for treasurer. And then I ran for treasurer. And we ran against each other, and it was a very competitive race. And so my viewpoint was that I felt like if you have to ask somebody or have conversations with the leadership about what you're going to do, then how come you just can't run your race and do what you're going to do just stand 10 toes down on it? Like, you could have just said, I'm running, this is what it is, bye, Ernest. No, it was, oh no, he was trying to find a way for us not to go against each other. And I didn't want to go against them, but I wasn't moving. I wasn't moving from my position. My position was treasurer. Like, that wasn't any other position I was going to do. So it was just interesting to me that in that time frame when that happened, that's what he went with. So that's why I said he was a Manchurian candidate when I ran against him. Because again, according to the definition, to indicate disloyalty, whether intentional or unintentional. Yeah, it was disloyal as fuck. And it was, whether it was intentional or not, right? That's what the definitions say. It includes the allegation that a person is being used as a puppet by some other person of power. Yeah, I thought he was being used as a puppet by Dorothy Tucker. Because she didn't like me. She wanted to run this young guy against me because it was two millennials fighting. So that was just really what it was. And I mean, I had my rationale. They didn't agree. So then, number 8, this podcast. You launched personal attacks against NABJ President Dorothy Tucker in a podcast uploaded on December 19, 2022. So y'all, feds are watching, they listening. They said you accused her of ageism, paternalism, and bitterness. Well, I mean, well, so they said I violated that as well. So then the ninth issue, they said you uploaded a personal attack on Executive Director Drew Berry on a podcast uploaded on December 19, 2022, claiming he doesn't like you because you are, quote, a Black queer millennial. Look, I'm just going to say, in my own personal view, the way that Drew has talked to myself and other queer NABJ leaders over the years, I just have felt like it was always condescending. I always felt like it was passive aggressive. And sometimes I think it was microaggressive. That's my personal experience. That's my opinion. And, I've had interactions with NABJ in the past when it came to support for the LGBTQ task force, how we felt like we've had when I was the chair, along with other members, and maybe some of those members will speak out, but there had been concerns that was raised about some of the ways in which the national organization engaged with the NABJ LGBTQ task force and LGBTQ members. And I'm going to even go so far to say that, in fact, we had to have a meeting with the LGBT task force, the membership, to express the concerns about how people felt at the conventions and the events. There was a meeting where Dorothy Tucker came on board. This was in 2020 after my election, because there were some people who felt like the rhetoric was homophobic from candidates, supports, and surrogates. Like, there were people like, Walter had said something like, is this the type of person you want to be on the board? And people pushed back, including myself, and said, well, what do you mean? Is this the type of person? What type of person? What are you talking about? And what are you referring to? He had never addressed it at that time. We spoke about that later, and I told him that language was triggering and it was problematic. But there were things being said and done. Even when, Roland Martin had tweeted about me in a negative light, criticizing me during the campaign trail in support of Walter Smith Randolph. And there were people under Roland's tweet that had said stuff like, get this weirdo out of here, which is also, again, problematic, homophobic language. Like, weirdos, we're called, all kind of names. You all see this. You all know what this looks like. And at that time, there was people from my camp that was like, the rhetoric needs to tone down, because it was getting heated on both sides. But again, here I am, right? I'm the only one being critiqued for this. But I just felt like at that time, the culture of NABJ seemed like they had problems with Black queer millennials specific in organization. And there had to be a meeting with the LGBTQ task force to discuss and share these experiences with Dorothy Tucker. We had a conversation. That was in the summer of 2020. And that led Dorothy and the organization to put out a statement supporting the LGBTQ community or addressing the concerns that was raised. Because there was a history there. And I had spoken on that history and other members shared it. So for them to act like the stuff that I'm saying is falling from the sky, there's been history of homophobia in NABJ. And that's just a fact. Like, Thomas Morgan, the late, great Thomas Morgan, who was the first openly gay president in NABJ's history in the 90s, the things he experienced, the things that this LGBT task force experienced to get the LGBT task force, that's here. So simply saying, oh, you're spreading disinformation, that's a lie. All right. Point number 10, they gave me all these violations, y'all. They said, you accuse NABJ of allowing companies to exploit NABJ members at career fairs. I said this in the tweet. Well, yeah, I felt like, in my opinion, because it's my opinion, that I did feel like, as a NABJ member, when I'm going to the NABJ conventions, there were companies that I felt like were not offering jobs. They were just trying to get information, to spam us with information about the company and their businesses. There was a whole situation in a newsletter where there was a partnership, and this was like in 2020. Like, all this stuff was like nearly 3 years ago. But like, there was a situation with a company that NABJ looked like they was about to partner with a panel. And this organization, this company, was a Chinese-based company, if I'm not mistaken, that had some concerns, some human rights concerns around misinformation. And it was like a whole little mini controversy behind it. And I think NABJ had to respond, so they pulled back from it. But it was like, do y'all know this company that you all are affiliating yourselves with? And I just felt like you're taking partnerships from certain groups and you're not even doing the vetting of them. And I felt like, to some extent, that's exploitative of members. And when I went to career fairs, I did feel like that's how I viewed it. They got their own opinion, but I do feel like a lot of times those are not some of those jobs. They're not offering jobs at all those job fairs, or they might say they are, but in reality, some of those jobs are not what they describe them to be or what the salaries they describe them to be. I can attest to this. I have spoken about this in several forums and concerns. So, like, let me be very clear that, like, I'm not somebody who just was talking shit on Twitter. I was active in NABJ. I went to business meetings. I went to committee meetings. I was a committee chair of 2 to 3 committees for NABJ. I was winning Emerging Journalist of the Year. I was a chapter president. Like, I'm somebody who shows up and speaks up. So it's not like this stuff had not already been discussed before and there were not feedback given. So, number 11 violation. They said, you publicly criticized a large group of membership in media companies saying, quote, broadcasters will be the death of NABJ. NABJ should change its name to the National Association of Broadcasters. I did say that. I don't regret it. I felt like the organization has been overran by a lot of broadcasters. And I feel like if you do not fully give support and attention to the other various platforms of NABJ, then this organization will not thrive. Because if everything is TV stations, then what are we doing? Like, if the primary focus of programming is centered around broadcast journalists, if you look at panels that are done, a lot of the panels are overwhelmingly broadcast. A lot of the people that speak to the membership is broadcast. When you look at the board representation, who's president often are typically people that come from broadcast stations. Okay? Dorothy Tucker, CBS. I mean, since I'm not a member, I can say what I want to say. I wouldn't be surprised if Ken Lemon is running for president because he's broadcast. I wouldn't be surprised that he's running for president. He might win. Who knows? Broadcast. Sarah Glover at the time worked for NBC when she was the president. That was a broadcast company. Bob Butler, he was a broadcaster. It just seems to be a pattern of a lot of these presidents in recent years coming from broadcast companies. The sponsorships are coming from big TV conglomerates. It's very TV heavy, broadcast heavy. And so, in my opinion, if you're trying to create an organization that is going to expand, okay, the scope of what journalism looks like in 2023 or 2022 or whatever, you have to have more representation or consider print journalists. You have to. There's a VP of print. But with all due respect, our VP of print currently at NABJ is not in print journalism. She is not at a print media publication. She's not at Philadelphia Magazine, the Chicago Tribune. She comes from print, but she's currently at like a radio station or something. I mean, no shade. She has print background, but her current job is connected to radio. It's not a formal print position. And the print task force, they're struggling, like the print representation at NABJ is just struggling. So what we're not going to do is act like there is no validity or any validity to the critique. It's a critique. It's a figure of expression. So then, last but not least, violation number 12. In a May 1st, 2020 tweet, you see they went all the way back to 2020 again, y'all. You said the NABJ president, I didn't name her, made calls to my chapter leadership to try to police my free speech. President Tucker denied making those calls. You said you could provide proof of the calls. You did not. Well, here's the issue with that. The proof is that the person who was a board member, which means proof calls, they said that that's what happened. Unfortunately, this organization likes to engage in he say, she say. My whole thing is you can't critique me about something that I had said. And at the time in which they said that you said none, that was a confidential conversation I had with an NABJ founder and dealing with the national president. And that whole entire exchange was confidential and was done amongst us. So the fact that this NABJ founder, who I want to be very clear, used this information in this ad hoc committee is very telling to me. And it's very concerning because it violated the understanding that we had around that discussion. And at that time, I was not going to disclose the name of the person who said it, nor did I, and I said it to them that I was not going to disclose that name because I was at that time trying to protect this person's identity. But this person has no problem claiming and admitting or stating what they know. But let me tell you about this NABJ ad hoc committee. Those are the allegations, y'all. Those are the violations. Those are the 12. I know they're not really that strong. That was what they told me. That is what they gave me in this letter. Those were the violations. There were no additional violations. Those were the 12 violations. And so here's the ad hoc committee in the letter. It is Maureen Bayun, who is the NABJ founder, Allison Davison, who's the NABJ founder, Joe Davison, who's the NABJ founder, Sia Nukor, she is the NABJ parliamentarian on the current board, and then Paula Madsen, who's a longtime NABJ member. Those are the 5 people. And I'm going to be very honest with you because this is my opinion. I believe that this ad hoc committee was stacked up against me because the people who are on this committee, some of these people have had previous personal gripes with me. The 5 people, not all of them. So let me be clear. I don't know Paula and I don't know Maureen personally. But I am made aware that they're close friends with Drew Berry and the current president, the NABJ president, Dorothy Tucker. So there is relationship. All these people have strong relationships with the national president and the executive director. So they, the national president gets to create the ad hoc committee. They get to appoint chairs and appoint whatnot. This is the ad hoc committee. This is not even a permanent committee of NABJ. It's looking very sus, right? The national president and the national board gets to create these committees and appoint these people. These are their friends and they're close people. These are people they're very close to. Like I literally saw Allison Davis and Dorothy Tucker. They're besties. They were having lunch together at the Emerging Journalist Convention. Joe Davison is a close supporter and advocate who also championed Dorothy Tucker's campaign. Sia was appointed by Dorothy Tucker for previous board positions in the past, and she's the parliamentarian, and she's been leading the charge in dealing with the compliance issues around PABJ and NABJ. So this is a stacked up board of committee. And it's obvious that they did not have any people who reflected the larger spirit. So you have these founders and these longtime people and a board member. Maybe you didn't think of getting an everyday journalist, you didn't think of getting someone that's outside of this very senior level. Did you not consider that some of these people on here, with all due respect, based on the way they wrote this information, they don't understand how social media works. They're calling Facebook posts tweets. They're just not even knowing what the formats are. But one of the things, so that's what happened there. But let me tell you what my response back to them was, because I do want to be fully transparent. On March 6th, I did respond back to them via email, and I'm going to read exactly what I said to them because I'm just ready to just put it out there so people could just know what went down. But let me tell you what I said. March 6, 2023, NABJ Ad Hoc Committee, Ethics Committee, alleged violations of NABJ Code of Conduct and Anti-Harassment Policy. Dear NABJ Ad Hoc Ethics Committee, I hope all is well. I would like to request a meeting with the committee to categorically address what I believe to be an unfair and inaccurate assessment of the information provided. Furthermore, it appears that these tweets, many of which are nearly 3 years old and had been previously addressed, are being retroactively penalized with a code of conduct policy that wasn't as specific and/or updated as they are currently. According to the NABJ website, the NABJ Code of Conduct updated their policy on June 1st, 2020, and didn't inform the membership until after that date. Some of the materials being referenced in question were before or during that time period. To now confront these matters 3 years after the fact seems deliberately in bad spirit and poor taste, especially given that there is context being left out of these improper dug-up tweets, with some that appear to not be dated and surveilled in a way that appears even more concerning and alarming. Check the avatar photo on several of these tweets and posts. They were clearly collected over the years. See, sidebar, wasn't in the letter, but this part, what I'm about to say right now. Y'all, the tweets and the avatars were literally looking like they were screenshot at the time in which I made these posts. So they had been scaling and finding and sniffing my stuff for years. And this was under this confine. So that's very sus. Now back to what I said in the letter. Given this realization, it looks as if NABJ has been deceptively screenshotting my free speech, fouling this data and have held onto it with the purpose to incriminate me on trumped-up allegations and suspicions. Does the NABJ membership know you are doing this? Are you doing this to other members currently? Who is salvaging through my social media account looking for any and every time I've criticized NABJ on social media? The majority of these conjured up tweets, taken out of context and organized in a very biased fashion, appear to be lacking insight behind them. This entire behavior from the Ethics Committee is walking a very bizarre line of considering the organization and infringing upon the legitimate free speech of their members. I personally believe that these actions are retaliatory because under my leadership over PABJ, given that we are no longer affiliated with NABJ, to dig up mostly dated posts and misinterpret them in this way is very concerning and appears to be malicious. This is my opinion, just in case many of you have had a hard time knowing the difference. I request an immediate meeting with this committee to address what I believe to be a move made in bad faith, one that can also set an awful precedent if the public and membership at large knew what you all were trying to do right now. To be clear, this is my opinion and I'm entitled to it, just as much as you all have poorly mischaracterized the messaging regarding my social media posts. This committee cannot simply penalize and intimidate members whose free speech you disagree with. I have no problem addressing each post line by line, but I would like to also add that others during these times did similar things, and it's quite interesting that I'm the only one, quote, under investigation. Please review the attached remarks I have addressing each matter line by line. Please let me know how soon you all plan to allow me the chance to have a fair opportunity to address these matters. It's disappointing that with everything going on with Black journalists in America, you're looking at mostly old and resolved tweets that involve adults. A waste of time and an embarrassment. Please let me know how soon you all plan to allow me the chance to have a fair opportunity to address these matters. Best, Ernest Owens. I went in, y'all. I broke down everything about how concerning this was. They never replied back to me after I sent it. They confirmed. I sent it to Veronique Dotson. They told me to send it to her, who is over membership at NABJ. And she confirmed that she received it and that the committee had received it. I never got that meeting. I never got a follow-up. There was no true due process. Instead, this week, I have received this letter. I'm going to read the letter to you all, what I had received. Okay. March 28th, 2023. Email and carrier. I think they're going to send it to me. I guess they're going to mail the letter, but this one was sent to me via email. And it was sent to me by Drew Barry. He said he was sending this to me. Let me make sure I get my words right. He said, Mr. Owens, the NABJ board of directors directed me to send this communication to you. You know, petty, right? He sent it to me. And here's the letter. Dear Mr. Owens, this letter to advise you that the NABJ board of directors has received and reviewed the report of the ad hoc ethics committee relating to alleged violations by you of the NABJ code of conduct and anti-harassment policy, the NABJ Code of Conduct, and the NABJ Code of Ethics, assessed the alleged violations and evidence relating thereto, and have determined that the alleged violations have been substantiated. As a result, the board has determined that your membership in NABJ shall be suspended for a period of 5 years, effective immediately. As a consequence of your membership being suspended, you are, among other things, barred from attending or participating in any NABJ members-only communication platforms, any NABJ members-only meetings, running for NABJ elected office, voting in any elections, and holding any NABJ leadership positions in task forces or being a member of task forces. Your unprecedented, sustained pattern of violations over several years of misinformation, disinformation, and defamatory statements are the principal reasons that led to the board to take this action. The board reviewed the ad hoc ethics committee's sustained documentation regarding your alleged violations. The board also received and considered your written responses to the letter the ad hoc ethics committee forwarded to you listing the alleged violations. Your violations fall primarily under the categories of disseminating dissemination of misinformation or disinformation that could harm the NABJ brand or negatively impact future engagements with NABJ, including funding opportunities. Additionally, your violations fall under, quote, failure to interact with one another in a way that does not degrade or denigrate others. Specifically, your violations are primarily of paragraph 2 and 5 of the NABJ Code of Conduct, which I had repeated earlier, which is basically we expect anyone attending our events and participating in any form of NABJ communications or business, that one I mentioned earlier in the podcast. And in paragraph 5, which is NABJ members, staff, partners, board, volunteers must refrain from disseminating false or misleading information in person, virtually. So that was the other one. So they said, as communicated to you in the letter from the ad hoc committee, NABJ as a journalism organization encourages professional discourse and freedom of speech among its members, and the NABJ Code of Conduct contemplates such discourse. However, such professional discourse and freedom of speech does not include the dissemination of false or misleading information, particularly where such disinformation or misinformation can potentially harm the NABJ brand and or negatively impact other NABJ operations, members, partners, sponsors, and or funding sources. As you know, freedom of speech is a right granted by the United States Constitution, but is a right which prohibits the federal or state governments or other governmental entity from making any laws, quote, abridging the freedom of speech or of the press. The right does not apply to actions and or restrictions imposed by non-governmental entities or organizations such as private individuals, corporations, or other organizations, and does not prevent a private organization like NABJ and thousands of other organizations and companies from setting its own rules of engagement. Also, as you know, the right to free speech does not apply to slander, libel, or statements that may incite riots or immediate endanger the lives of others. These principles are reflected in the NABJ Code of Conduct. It is with sensitivity that the board does not wish to have to impose such sanctions on any member. However, the board is obligated to enforce NABJ operating procedures, policies, and our Constitution to help protect the organization and its members. And so they gave the same list of violations that I had spoken before that they justified. But at the end of the letter, here's what they said. This matter is final and cannot be appealed. The board hopes that you will understand the seriousness of your violations of the NABJ Code of Conduct and NABJ ethics policy, and that in the future, should you wish to rejoin NABJ, we welcome your involvement in whatever capacity is appropriate for your membership type at that time. Sincerely, the NABJ Board of Directors. So y'all, they tried to suspend me from it like Oscars. Look, Will Smith got suspended from the Academy for 10 years. I got suspended from NABJ for 5 years. I didn't even slap anybody. And I don't plan to, and I don't want to, and I don't support violence. The crazy part is, to me, is that they did all this, 5 years suspension. You would have thought I stole some money. You would have thought that I physically endangered somebody. You would have thought I was sending terroristic threats. It was crazy. So here's my thoughts, my takeaway, okay? If they could do this to me, they can do this to anybody. I was told that I made history as the first person in recorded NABJ history to be removed from the organization in this fashion. A 31-year-old Black gay freelancer is the first person in NABJ's history, recorded history, to be removed from the organization in this type of fashion. I'm always going to be a trailblazer, y'all. Even when this shit is wild. So, you know, when I got this, I ain't gonna hold you. It was disheartening. I was like, damn, they really hate me that they're going to trample over this much bullshit to try to discourage me, to disempower me, to try to humiliate me, to ridicule me, to really go after me in this way. It's ugly. It's nasty. It's driven by political. It's no secret that the board has had issues with me being critical of them, but I never thought that they would go this far. I never thought that this would be the level to which it escalated. and that this had been building for several years. And many people saw it. And many people thought to themselves, well, NABJ this, NABJ that. I'm here to tell you all that this is the first time I ever received a formal, like this situation was the first time I ever received a formal warning from the NABJ board of directors regarding any of the concerns around my tweets. I had disputes with individuals, but I had never even been given a formal warning that said, hey, Mr. Owens, these things you're saying is problematic. We're giving you a warning to remove or refrain from this. I never got a formal written letter. I never got an official warning directly from the NABJ board of directors or the organization regarding my posts. All of the things that was being disputed was being debated amongst us as members, but it was never at this level. So I just think it's interesting that they never said anything and then decide to drop all of a sudden an investigation and then let me reply. I don't get a meeting. I don't get any of my questions asked about the process. I didn't get any, they didn't follow up with any of my concerns about the nature of this or whether there was bias. Nothing happened. Instead, they just made their decision, said it was final, and they said I couldn't even appeal it. I never talked to the board of directors about it. They never interviewed me. They made a decision this serious and did not actually open me up to have a fair due process. So this to me is a concern. I think that members should ask these questions. I just want y'all to know that it appears to be that these people on this ad hoc committee and the board are looking through your social media. Big Brother is watching. I think they were clearly they've been collecting tweets on me. I wonder if there's a file. I'm just curious, do they keep a file of certain people in NABJ that are outspoken? Is Merida in the file? Is Roland Martin in the file? Who else be out here criticizing and speaking out loud? Are we all, is Vanessa Williams, the former NABJ president who really asks great questions, is there a foul on her? Is there a foul on, any Marlon Walker? People who, have raised questions that are fair? What are they doing? And who knows? Is there other races that just happen where they're, sitting back and trying to figure it out? I don't know. We don't know. There's no questions. And so, there's two ways to look at this. You could either assume that they're doing this to all the members and they're trying to keep this a fair process where they're evaluating and monitoring what we say and do at all times. Or did they just create this ad hoc committee out the blue and just use it to just go after me? And now the ad hoc committee is going to just pretty much dissolve. I don't know, but it's targeted. It's biased. And I know this is because I wrote the book on cancel culture. I know how this shit works. And so I know what they're doing. I know what they tried to do, but I want everyone listening to this podcast to know that I might have been disrupted, but I'm not dismayed. And the dream is not deferred, and the vision is not over, and the work is not over, and I'm not going to be silenced. And what are y'all going to do? What are y'all going to do to speak up? Who's going to make the phone calls? Who's going to demand accountability? We are journalists. We are advocates. We are champions of public policy and free speech and discourse. You can't just simply choose that because you don't like a person that you can just stack up all types of misinterpreted tweets and then oust people. Not in a journalism organization. Look, I get it. I got a lawyer. I'll talk to my counsel. Let me explain something to y'all. I don't want to sue NABJ. I don't plan to sue NABJ. That's not even where we're at right now. It's not a lawsuit, none of that. However, what we wanted to understand was what was the argument to justify this? And here's their rationale, right? Because I want to be very clear. I understand what they're saying and what they did because I'm about 100% sure that this letter they sent me, they had it reviewed by a lawyer. Did the board know this letter was sent to me? Did the board see the letter? I want to know. As board members, if you're listening, because I know you're listening, I would want you to request to see this letter they sent me. Did you know that this letter was sent to me? Was this the language y'all agreed to? Do you all as board members have autonomy? Or are y'all just listening to everything the executive director is telling you and Dorothy Tucker? And now that I'm no longer an NABJ member, I'm going to tell you my opinion. I think the executive director and the president of NABJ are co-running this organization in a way that I feel like is overpowering and it overshadows the achievements and the work of the board overall. That's my opinion. That's my opinion. And I can tell you that, in my opinion, it's because of the fact that it seems like the only people who are aware of all of these things seems to be the president and executive director. Board members don't even know what's going on. And to be very clear, I have not spoken. These board members will not speak to me. Okay? I just want to be very clear. They just left me hanging. Some of which are people that I had a lot of respect for. A lot of people that I thought were, had some integrity. But when you're successful like I am, and you're doing great things, haters are going to hate. I find it quite interesting that all of this is now happening in the midst of all the successes I have going on personally in my career, and also in the midst of PABJ separating from NABJ and what we went through with them. It's very interesting that all this is happening right now. The jealousy is real, and I believe it's jealousy. And I think we all know that we see this happen often with Black men and Black women in success, that when they're on that climb, there's always going to be those devils lurking out, trying to jump in and disrupt the show. We see this pattern, and at the end of the day, they're trying to break me. This was an attempt to try to break me, to scare me, to silence me, to intimidate me, to shame me. And I think they thought that by putting it in this way that I wouldn't want this attention. Actually, to be quite honest, I would rather tell the full truth about what happened in this process rather than sit up and let them try to silence me and shut me off and shut me out. What they did was unjust. If they felt how they felt, they could. But I felt like it was unjust as an NABJ member. They didn't break the law. Let me be clear. They didn't break the law. And that's why I love podcasts, because podcasts let you explain beyond a tweet. So let me just say this. Here's the argument, because I get it, because I talk to lawyers. NABJ has a right to have this policy. They have a right to create the rules as they want within this private institution. They are a private organization. They're not a federal government, right? They're a nonprofit. They're a private organization. They can create the rules however they see fit, and they can kick people out however they see fit because of the way the membership organization structure is. That is what they can do. However, we're not a social club. We're not a country club. We're not some small little, fraternity or sorority. We are a journalism organization that's supposed to be the beacon of free speech. And the fact that they're creating, in my opinion, a policy that really intimidates people from the type of free speech, and the fact that they are able to weaponize and interpret it as they see fit to draw up violations and get board to agree is very concerning and problematic. So at this point, that's what happened. That's all I'm going to say. I just want to say for now, what I want to say is that I am grateful for so many of you all who have consistently messaged me, reached out to me, showed love, spread the word, did all those things. I appreciate it. I'm grateful for my board for standing by my side. As an organization, the decision is we're not going to pay for board members' memberships. We're not, the board is not being members. We're not paying for those memberships anymore. We're not renewing our membership as board members. They suspended mine, but my board is not going to. The money that we would spend as a chapter on memberships, we're not going to spend that money there. And we're not going to the convention, and we're not going to, we paid for convention registration early, but we're requesting refund. We want our money back. We're going to get our money back. We're not going to participate in a national convention in, Birmingham, Alabama. We're not going. We're not going to invest money into an institution that is basically treating free speech in this way. We're just not going to do it. And, for the board to have made that decision to stand by my side, because I didn't even know when they put their statement out. I didn't write the statement. I had no part in the statement. That was warming for me, because we got to stand for something. We fall for anything. So I appreciate them for that. And I appreciate the other members who are speaking out publicly and, having my back and understanding this. And to those people that are members who, don't like me because I'm gay, don't like me because the way I speak out, don't hate me because I'm young and beautiful, don't like me because I'm outspoken like I am, because they don't understand how social media activism work, because they don't like my tactics, or they think that I'm a little bit too aggressive, or what are the other microaggressive ways they say about me? Flamboyant. I've heard that in NABJ from some members. Flamboyant. What do they say? Difficult to work with. You know the words. You know the microaggressions. To those people who say any of those things about me, I just want you to know that this is not just about me. This is bigger than me. This issue is bigger than me. This issue is something that should concern other members. Because what happens to the next Ernest Owens that comes to NABJ? What happens to the next Merida? What happens to the next, Roland Martin, who speaks up and speaks out, for better or for worse? What happens to the next people that challenge the organization? We're setting a bad precedent that anybody who is an active member that is expressing views, that they have to think twice, because anything could be interpreted as a violation if they feel like it makes them look bad. I mean, that's just the way it looks like right now, that they could just interpret it however they want. They can take tweets out of threads and just, take one word or one phrase and then run with it and not even look at everything holistically. I mean, what kind of journalists are these people? Do they understand how writing works? Or is the organization just led by so many broadcasts? Look, I'm just going to say this. People need to understand the quality of prose and writing. People need to understand the sophistication of writing, understand how writing works, because if they did, they wouldn't be making these types of attacks. But I digress. So that is everything for now. I wanted to put this out, let people know what was said. Look, at the end of the day, the receipts are there. I have all the letters and documentation. So if anybody was saying that I lied, the letter didn't say this, the letter didn't say that, I have the letters, I have the documentation. Those are the receipts. I didn't want to just throw them out there on Twitter in that way. I wanted to just provide my voice behind what I'm saying. And at the end of the day, they're going to make their decisions, and they're setting a bad precedent. And I'm a former NABJ member with concerns. And that's why, I did this podcast to raise them. So to those people that are listening, here you go. There you go. And as always, be well and be best. Ernestly Speaking is recorded in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and can be found on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. To stay up to date with the latest on the show, follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Mr. Ernest Owens. Use the hashtag Ernestly Speaking to tell me what you thought about this episode, and check out my website at ernestowens.com.